This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who, at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We have another great show. A lot of news this week, news that Freedom Watch and I personally made. We're not sitting around waiting for other people to do things, such as some other public interest groups. We do it ourselves. You can't depend on our so-called Justice Department. We do not have a Justice Department. It's a complete sham, particularly under the leadership of Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. All's for show. It's not for dough. So what happened this week? First of all, there were the Kavanaugh hearings. And Judge Brett Kavanaugh of the D.C. Circuit is up to be basically anointed as a Supreme Court justice. And I watched the dog and pony show on Capitol Hill. I got to tell you, the Democrats really disgraced themselves. I mean, they're a bunch of liars. They are frankly a bunch of fools. But the Republicans also participated in this dog and pony show. And I have to wonder why it was so difficult for them to turn documents over to Democrats. Frankly, who cares? They've got the votes. The Democrats are going to vote against Kavanaugh anyway. The Republicans are going to vote for him. This is typical prevarication. It's typical Washington nonsense. It's typical Washington obstruction on the Republicans' part. But on the Democrats' part, it's Washington dishonesty. And it rises to the level of why the American people see Congress basically as a bunch of clowns and fools. But something came up at the end of the hearing on Thursday, which was very important. And I had actually written to members of the Judiciary Committee. I'm always hopeful. I'm an optimist. I don't believe that I'll ever give up, even with these fools and clowns up there. But I wanted to put them on the spot. And I told them, I said, you've got to ask questions about our landmark case, Klayman versus Obama, where Freedom Watch obtained preliminary injunctions against the mass illegal surveillance that had been revealed by Edward Snowden and other whistleblowers, some of whom I represented, against the American people. This mass surveillance was without and is without probable cause that a crime's being committed or that there are communications or conspiracies with terrorists. This would be the only basis to do surveillance on an American citizen in particular. But we know that under both President George W. Bush and under Barack Obama, hundreds of millions of Americans have been surveilled without probable cause. The judge in the case where we got the preliminary injunctions ruled that this was almost Orwellian, typical of a police state, something that we would read about in George Orwell's 1984 or Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. And it's serious. So the reason that I contacted the members of the Judiciary Committee is because Judge Brett Kavanaugh had written an unnecessary opinion nullifying the decisions of the lower court, saying that this was unconstitutional under the Fourth Amendment, which it is. The Fourth Amendment protects American citizens against unreasonable searches and seizures, and that's what this is. What happened was, after we got those rulings, the Congress passed the USA Freedom Act, which was supposed to eliminate some loopholes and prevent this from happening. It didn't. We know that the illegal surveillance continued on against President Trump, against his family, against his colleagues, against yours truly, against the client of mine, and others. Anybody who's challenging the government is subject to this mass surveillance, and it can be used for coercion and blackmail, and I'm sure that it has been. That may help explain Chief Justice Roberts' flip on Obamacare at the last minute. What did they have on him? How did President Obama and his henchmen in the deep state use that against the Chief Justice to get him to flip at the last minute on Obamacare? Anyway, at the end of the hearing on Thursday, Senator Patrick Leahy, a Democrat, raised this issue with Brett Kavanaugh. And he had no answer as to why he had written this opinion, which said that the mass surveillance was perfectly okay. He didn't have to write that opinion. The D.C. Circuit at the time vacated, that is, nullified, these preliminary injunctions that we had obtained only because the USA Freedom Act came into effect, and they felt that that solved the issue. It didn't, of course, and we've got lawsuits pending on that. But Kavanaugh wrote that the whole situation was similar to a pen register, just getting a listing of telephone calls. But no, the NSA, the CIA, the FBI actually get the content of your calls. And that's what's different about it. And Leahy challenged Kavanaugh on that. And no sooner than that happened, the so-called fact sheet came out of the White House, quote, setting the record straight, Klayman versus Obama. And when I blast out this radio show today, because I send it out on Freedom Watch's email list, and we put it on our website, I'm going to put this fact sheet up because it shows you how defensive the White House is about this entire issue. And they tried to justify Judge Kavanaugh's opinion, which he didn't need to write. The other two justices that vacated the preliminary injunctions just simply said it's moot, and they left it at that. And there's a rule of judicial construction. If you don't have to say anything, you don't say it. But Kavanaugh wrote this opinion, I think, to curry favor with those in the establishment Republican community, the Bushies, that feel that this mass surveillance is okay. And what the White House pointed out was, well, there was a new case that came out in 2018 called Carpenter versus United States, which said that the government acquisition of cell phone records from a private wireless carrier constitutes Fourth Amendment speech. So Kavanaugh is suggesting now that his decision would be different because of what the Supreme Court ruled in 2018, that you can extend the Carpenter decision to the issue of mass surveillance without probable cause. Well, this is the disingenuous, this is the insincerity of Justice-to-be Kavanaugh. He will be confirmed. And at this point, as I've said, it's too late to turn back. I wish he hadn't been nominated by President Trump. President Trump got bad advice yet again from his counselors, this time Don McGahn, the White House counsel. But it tells you that, in fact, the Supreme Court and people that want to be on the Supreme Court are political animals. And to hear the nonsense coming out of Judge Kavanaugh this week and other Republican senators, that once you're nominated for a judgeship, and in particular to be on the Supreme Court, that all of a sudden you become independent. All of a sudden, all of your political beliefs go down the drain. All of a sudden, you are, in fact, the sole arbiter of the law, and it's going to be fair and neutral, and giving the impression that judges always make decisions according to the law. Now, I know that not to be the case. I have judge friends. They'll tell you, I figure out where I want to go, what decision I want to make, and then I have my law clerks hunt up for law that will justify it. Law in quotes, okay? Because the law can go a lot of different ways. So I don't want people to be fooled by these confirmation hearings. And I'll tell you something. They saw what it was all about with Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey yesterday. Here's a guy who lied to not just his Senate colleagues on the Judiciary Committee, but the American people, and said that he was releasing documents and he was going to risk being expelled from the U.S. Senate because it was the right thing to do, because it showed racial profiling, support of it by Judge Kavanaugh. Well, we found out when the documents ultimately came out that Kavanaugh was actually against it. Here's the hypocrisy. This is what I can't stand, and it's why I love President Trump, is that even the Republicans on that committee, Trey Gowdy, Ben Sasse, Gowdy's not on the committee, he's in the House, but he made a statement that he likes Cory Booker and doesn't understand why he acted that way. And of course, Ben Sasse said, well, I like Senator Booker. You know what? It's not a question of liking people. It's a question of doing the right thing. And this guy's a complete political hack. He wants to run for the U.S. Senate. He wanted to create an issue to dare the Senate to expel him for violating rules, which in fact didn't even apply because the documents had been released and he lied about it. Booker lied about it. But what was he going to do? He was going to play the race card after that. He's African American. He's a constant race baiter. He's worse than even Obama. And of course, you have Kamala Harris on that Judiciary Committee, who's also a race baiter. And they use their blackness to try to justify their beliefs and to knock the president down and people around him. Well, you know what? I believe in equality for everybody. Martin Luther King was a hero for me, even if he had some connections to the Communist Party. I mean, he said the right thing, and he tried to bring people together. But this was a dog and pony show on Capitol Hill. And Judge Kavanaugh, while, he did a good job for himself, frankly, he didn't answer one question when he was up there. He will be a Supreme Court justice. He's better than what we get from the Democrats. But I'll tell you something, this is far from perfect. And people need to know what the judiciary is all about. It's highly politicized. I'm going to do a conference in Washington, D.C. at the National Press Club in late fall. We're going to bring in experts. I want people to really understand what we're dealing with here because, frankly, they've been deceived during these Kavanaugh hearings as to the so-called neutrality and independence of federal judges in particular. Now, let me talk about two new cases that I brought recently. And this is what differentiates Freedom Watch from my former group, Judicial Watch. They don't have experienced trial lawyers working for them. They don't have people that know how to really try a case. The head of Judicial Watch is Tom Fitton. He's not a lawyer. In fact, when I hired him, he lied to me. He said he was a graduate of George Washington University. It's not the only problem I have with Fitton. I'll explain that sometime in the future. We don't have time. But the reality is, in terms of what Judicial Watch does, and I hope that it succeeds. It's my little baby. I started it. I conceived of it. But they're basically just out there getting documents for the most part. And they do a few things that aren't documents, but mostly documents. Now, the media loves those documents, and they put Fitton on TV, particularly Fox News. He's become the darling of Jeanine Pirro, frankly, who is also, although I agree with a lot of what she says, a lot of hot air. But the reality is that Freedom Watch actually does something. We are your Justice Department. And what did we do this week? We filed the case against the social media companies, against Google, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, YouTube is part of Google, a class action lawsuit. Now, who else would do that? Now, we need your support for that. We need your strong financial support. We need to hire more lawyers. We need to ramp up. It's David against Goliath. And this is important because why are these social media companies censoring conservative, libertarian, and religious speech? Because they are working in tandem with the people like Obama, like Hillary Clinton, like Robert Mueller, like James Comey. This is something which we have to address. Be right back to explain why Sessions is full of it.
Dangerous.
You don't hear, use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special prosecutor.
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Let me explain to you why Jeff Sessions is worthless and full of it. After Freedom Watch files this lawsuit, and we drew a Republican-appointed, Trump-appointed judge, which is good. We just want a neutral decision. I'm not saying he's going to lean over for us, but I'll tell you something. If we had drawn an Obama or Clinton appointment to that federal court in Washington, D.C., the lower federal court, you can forget it. And that's the reality of the judiciary, particularly these days, the federal judiciary. But we're going to get a fair shake from this judge. He has a very good reputation. He was appointed by Trump. And, of course, Trump has been critical of social media. They're censoring him, too, and they're censoring his conservative, libertarian, and religious supporters. But Sessions announces after we file this lawsuit, we're going to have a conference with states' attorneys general. Now, that's a complete sham. I mean, yeah, you're going to talk about what social media has been doing. We know what they've been doing with Alex Jones, with others, with me. We have a limitation put on our YouTubes by Google. We just eclipsed 50,000 subscribers, but we've been at 49 now for about 6 months. Now, maybe Google saw they were being sued, so they took off the limitation. But the Justice Department has an antitrust division. I was on the trial team that broke up AT&T, the monopoly in the telephone companies. That's why we say at the lead-in of the show that's why you have all your cell phones and all these communications opportunities today. You have competition. Sessions could have ordered his attorney general to conduct an investigation. He could have ordered, his antitrust division. He could have ordered them to send out civil investigative demands to get information, internal documents from these companies showing that the CEOs, who are all ultra-leftists, most of them in Silicon Valley, most of them in the San Francisco, Oakland area of Northern California, which is somewhere to the left of Moscow and Beijing, that he could have done it himself. But he doesn't want to do it himself. He doesn't want to risk alienating the media. They're on his side right now. He's the darling of the left. He's taken a dive on Hillary Clinton and the use of the private email server. He's taken a dive on Robert Mueller. He lets Rosenstein rubber stamp everything Mueller wants. He's taken a dive on the intelligence agency czars under Obama, Clapper and Brennan, who engaged in this mass surveillance. And he's taken a dive on Peter Strzok, Lisa Page. But you know what he hasn't taken a dive on? Because they got to have a sacrificial lamb. That's Andrew McCabe, who was the deputy in the FBI under Comey. You burn someone at a middle level to take the heat off of having to go after the higher-ups. So, yeah, McCabe is now subject to a grand jury. Look at what happened to Scooter Libby during the Bush administration. They had to burn somebody, the special counsel. They burned Libby for lying under oath. And this is the charade that we see. And you see, this is why I love the president, because he's willing to call it as it is. But his problem, as we're going to talk about later, is that he's getting really bad advice from Rudy Giuliani and Jay Sekulow, his two current lawyers. These guys are television lawyers. The president picks lawyers because he sees them on Fox News, you know? I told you about Larry King in a prior show. He picks all of his lawyers for his divorce matters because he sees them at a delicatessen in Beverly Hills called Nate and Al. And because of that, he couldn't even divorce his seventh wife who was cheating on him with the gym instructor because the prenuptial was so bad, he would have lost everything. So this is the world that we live in today. And it's not what it appears to be. And this is what Freedom Watch is trying to do, bring back justice, take the hard-hitting cases, and to be the People's Justice Department. Now, Larry Klayman, in his private capacity, filed this week another lawsuit, groundbreaking lawsuit, for Judge Roy Moore, who was defamed by Sacha Baron Cohen, that comedian who defrauds people into giving interviews. Now, in the case of Judge Moore, he was falsely accused of being a pedophile by an undercover, fictitious, of course, agent of the Mossad. That's the Israeli equivalent of the CIA. The only difference is the Mossad actually does its job and the CIA usually screws up. But the reality is that there was an actionable violation of law here. There was fraud, there was intentional infliction of emotional distress, and of course there was defamation. You can't accuse somebody of the crime of being a pedophile, that's moral turpitude, without having legal accountability. Now, I brought that case in my personal capacity for Judge Moore. And I did it because it was the right thing to do. We sued for $95 million worth of damages to put a chink into the side of Sacha Baron Cohen and his benefactors at CBS and Showtime, who allowed this to occur. The release that was signed was even fraudulent in itself because the persons that signed for Sacha Baron Cohen were Yerushalayim TV. Judge Moore thought he was going to get an award from Israel because he's a big supporter of Israel. He's a person of faith. He loves the Jewish nation. He is Christian. He loves the Jewish nation. Jesus was a Jew, of course. And they tricked him completely into this in a fraudulent way. Now, we brought this lawsuit, and it's going forward, and we drew a Republican judge, which is good. We'll be right back with the next segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with Laura Loomer. She's a true American patriot. She's a hero. She's fearless. She's somebody who will not be put down and told to shut up. And you all know about her. She's in the media. She's been discriminated against by social media. And she appeared and showed up at a hearing this week in front of the House of Representatives, I believe it was. And it was dealing with the issue of social media. Actually, it was the U.S. Senate, excuse me. And she was shouted down after she raised a question for the head of Twitter, Jack Dorsey. And I want to play this clip, and I want Laura to explain what it is she was trying to accomplish and how she was shut out from making a comment. She wasn't in any way obnoxious. She wasn't loud. She just wanted to be heard, and they shut her down. While over in another room of the Senate this week, you had all these shrews and lunatics screaming during the KAVANAUGH hearings, busting it up, and unbelievably the head of that committee, Charles Grassley, allowed that to continue and called that free speech. So let's listen to the words of Laura Loomer in front of this Senate hearing over social media.
Please help us, Mr. President, before it is too late, because Jack Dorsey is trying to influence the election, to sway the election.
What's she saying? I can't understand her. What? How about it in? 12 and a half, 15, $7, $20.
Laura, tell me what it is you were trying to accomplish and what kind of discrimination you've experienced from Twitter, from Facebook, and these other social media companies on the left who are bent on turning the minds and hearts of the American people against the vision of our founding fathers, creating a leftist dictatorship in effect. And of course, when these social media companies and their CEOs, who are all multimillionaires or billionaires, succeed in having this country flipped over to the far left in terms of its leaders, they'll get more perks and favors from the government and become even richer. So tell us what you were trying to accomplish this week.
Well, I showed up to the Twitter hearing, the social media hearings in the House and the Senate this week. And, you know, it was very disturbing to me how they were scheduled at the same time as the KAVANAUGH hearing, because free speech is it's the one thing that makes this country the greatest country on planet Earth and what separates this country from any other place in the world, right? It's our First Amendment right, something that people from all around the world wish they could have, something that most people don't get to enjoy. But here in America, we value free speech, but it's under attack by the left. The left wants to censor and shut down conservatives who support Donald Trump. And two of the biggest offenders are Facebook CEO, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg and Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey. And I disrupted the House hearing when Jack Dorsey was speaking because Jack Dorsey was lying to Congress, and that's a crime. And I just was sick to my stomach listening to Jack Dorsey lie as he was asked whether or not Twitter is censoring conservatives, whether they shadow ban people, and he was just making up excuses, lying to members of Congress. And these old men who probably don't even know how to use social media, they probably have staffers who use Twitter for them, they were just sitting there allowing Jack Dorsey to get away with his lies. And for me, I'm a conservative journalist, I'm a Trump supporter, and I have been targeted by Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey unverified me on Twitter for speaking the truth about Islam. I am currently under a 30-day Facebook ban, and I've been banned from Facebook multiple times simply for speaking the truth and being a Trump supporter. And I am just sick and tired of having my rights and my First Amendment right and my free speech shut down and violated because these liberals in Silicon Valley want to destroy the First Amendment and silence all Trump supporters so that they can impeach Trump and not have any resistance on social media from his supporters.
Well, it's not the first time that you've been courageous, Laura. Tell us some of your other run-ins lately with the left and how they try to shut you down.
About a year ago, I stormed the stage of the Shakespeare in the Park Julius Caesar performance in which they were portraying basically assassination porn of President Trump. And I shut it down because the assassination scene, that is. I let them have their play, but I disrupted the assassination scene because you shouldn't be allowed to incite violence against the president. And I was arrested for that. I am also known for confronting very high-profile Democrats and politicians with my cell phone and confronting them with questions that nobody has the courage to ask, but everyone wants to know the answer to. So I've confronted Hillary Clinton, James Comey, Bill Clinton, Chelsea Clinton, Huma Abedin, Keith Ellison, Maxine Waters, and most recently Jack Dorsey, and this video has gone absolutely viral. And it's funny because while I was standing up for President Trump, who has been censored by Twitter, he had his account deleted by Twitter for several moments. They censor and shut down his supporters. It was a Republican who shouted me down. So you can see the video for yourself. And I stood up and I said, Jack Dorsey, you're a liar. You're a liar. You are lying about censoring conservatives on social media. You censored me. You censored Milo, Chuck Johnson, James O'Keefe. You have censored a lot of people, including the president of the United States, when you deleted his account. And you can't hear my audio because I really do believe that the media cut the mics when I was talking so you couldn't hear what I was saying. Because then this congressman, representative from Missouri, Representative Billy Long, decided to shout me down and literally auction me off. He auctioned off our First Amendment right to the highest bidder in the room. That was Jack Dorsey. And not only was it extremely disrespectful to conservatives who were, really hoping that our Republican representatives would stand for our rights and free speech, but it was also very demeaning, right? I found it to be extremely misogynistic and sexist. And I don't like using those words. I don't use those words lightly, but for him to auction a female conservative journalist off, a Trump supporter, like she was a hog, right? To treat me like I'm a prostitute up for sale in a room. I mean, it was just very, very disrespectful.
Well, you're right. You're right. And he actually demeaned himself. I don't usually see racism around every corner or sexism or anti-Semitism around every corner. Of course, we're both Jewish, Laura. I'm Messianic. Yeah. But this was as if the guy was acting like he was a pimp. He was selling you off. I mean, and he was selling me off, and that's how our representatives behave. They behave like pimps, right? They just want to sell us down the river. That's what our representatives do. These members of the swamp, these swamp creatures, they are pimps, right? They're pimping out their constituents. They're pimping out Americans. They go to Washington so they can get rich off of our behalf, right? Well, that's right, and that's why I wrote my book years ago. Yeah. It's entitled Whores, W-H-O-R-E-S, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment. We've got these politician whores, we've got judge whores, we've got lawyer whores, we have media whores. The whole Washington, D.C. are filled with whores. And in the beginning of the book, I write about how the D.C. police years ago tried to get rid of the prostitutes on 14th Street because they walk up and down in Washington, and they herded them across the 14th Street Bridge to Virginia, hoping that they could make it Virginia's problem. Well, the prostitutes marched right back, and they're back in D.C. And that's what we're dealing with here. And that's why what you're doing is important. Our hard-hitting cases are important. We need to take real action here. A lot of people that talk, but you're one of the few people that actually do anything. I might add, I've got a new book. It's a 4-volume work called Essays of a Mad Man. You can buy it at freedomwatchusa.org with a contribution over $100. You'll get a free copy. But Laura, where can people go to see some of the videos of your courageous actions in standing up to these whores?
You can follow me on Twitter before I'm banned and shut down for being a conservative at Laura Loomer. You can also go to my website, lauraloomer.us, and also my YouTube channel, which is, just Laura Loomer. And you can see all the videos there for yourself. But you're right. They are whores. That's what they are. These people are whores, and they're trying to pimp us out. And that's what he tried to do to me. I mean, he literally treated me like I was a prostitute up for sale in the halls of Congress while I was defending our president and the American people in the silent majority. I mean, for them to call this a conspiracy theory and for them to try to discredit me and call me names and trash me on Fox News and call me a far-right Nazi, white supremacist, whatever they want to call me, simply because I'm fighting for the First Amendment. If I was truly a fascist, if I was truly a Nazi, if I was truly a white supremacist, I would be fighting to suppress the First Amendment. Isn't that right? I mean, do these people have any common sense or any logic? I mean, they're all just babbling morons. That's what these people are, really. These members of the mainstream media, they are babbling morons.
Well, I'll tell you the babbling morons and the hypocrisy is that, John McCain died. I'm sorry the guy died, but frankly, he was a terrible senator. He accomplished little to nothing his entire life. He was destructive. He was nasty. He was cruel. And yet the hypocrisy and the phoniness of Washington, D.C. is that we have to immortalize this guy even more than if a president had died. Now, who's the heir apparent to John McCain? Marco Rubio of Florida. That's my home state. So during this hearing, apparently, that's out there on the internet too, Alex Jones was standing next to Marco Rubio when he was giving an interview to the media about the allegations of social media bias. And Alex suggested a question that Rubio could address or ask rhetorically. And he just tapped Rubio on the shoulder a little bit, which, is normal in Washington. Everybody touches everybody. You can see when presidents go in the State of the Union message, everybody's, touching him on the shoulder and whispering to him and shaking his hand. And Rubio says, "Get your hand off of me, man," as if Alex had some loathsome disease, as if there was something about Alex like a leper or, he was contagious or he had a virus, Ebola or whatever. And I can't stand Rubio, okay? To me, he's a phony. And it's clear that this guy wants to become the next John McCain. And I don't care if Alex made a few inopportune remarks. He's apologized for that. He doesn't deserve to be removed from social media. And frankly, President Trump should stand up more for Alex Jones, because he wouldn't be president if it wasn't for Alex Jones. Alex Jones had a tremendous audience, a tremendous reach before the social media did a number on him. And, you know, other people can get away with these kinds of things. Cory Booker can get away with lying in front of the Senate and playing the race card. But Alex Jones can't say some things unless he's going to be banned from Twitter or Facebook or YouTube or whatever.
Right.
So this is
and
the world we live in today.
It just goes to show you how these Republican representatives, these people, they don't even really represent us. I mean, Marco Rubio, right, little Marco, he doesn't even support Trump. So, of course, he's going to want Jack and Mark Zuckerberg to censor us on social media, because he wants Trump supporters to be silenced, because he's a never-Trumper. He doesn't like Trump. So, of course, he's not going to care about his supporters, right? And then you have people like Representative Joe Barton, who was up there on the hearing as well, who was laughing at me when I was getting shouted down and auctioned off by Representative Billy Long. Well, you know what's funny, and what Joe Barton wasn't laughing at, is the fact that earlier last year in November, I believe it was, I exposed him for sexually harassing women and sending pics on his congressional cell phone, which is, you know, paid for by the taxpayers, of course, to women who didn't really want to be subjected to eye cancer. I mean, if you see this guy, he's not exactly the type of man you want to be sending you pictures of his, right? So, I mean, it's so funny, because he is now retiring in disgrace because of me. So they call me a protester, right? And these people laugh at me, these representatives, these Republicans, and mind you, I'm a Republican myself. They're supposed to be representing us, but they are mocking.
Well, here's the game, Laura.
Right?
Here's the game. Okay, it's a full court press. Okay, you have Robert Mueller, who's a product of the Republican and Democrat establishments. You have Jeff Sessions, who's letting Mueller do whatever he wants. He's now become the darling of the left. You've got these vigilante groups like Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and others trying to tear the country apart physically with violence in the streets. You've got the social media that we're talking about, Google, Facebook, Twitter, etc. You've got the left-wing media, CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times. Now we have this phony editorial in the New York Times. I don't even think the guy exists, that took a shot at President Trump, claiming he's a high-level Trump official. And you've got the judges, okay? As I told you, if you draw an Obama or Clinton judge, you can forget it in these kinds of cases. And, you know, thank God in the last 3 or 4 cases I filed, I got Republican or Trump judges. Maybe I'll get a fair shake. So this is the kind of thing that we have to deal with. I mean, Ayn Rand talked about this in Atlas Shrugged, that this country is being taken over. It's being dumbed down. And once they get their people in power, people like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or others, we are going to be basically shoved up against the wall, enslaved, and we'll have nothing left in this country. The vision of our founding fathers will have been trashed. I'm going to be right back with the final segment of Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman. But go to freedomwatchusa.org in the interim and see what it is we're doing that makes us the People's Justice Department. Thank you, Laura, for coming on, and God bless you.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
You often hear this, from public interest groups. We're the only ones that are doing anything. Donate money to us. We're going to change the world. You see these ads on television. But you know what? Look at the hard, cold facts. It's Freedom Watch that's your Justice Department. It's Larry Klayman, who, without scratching my own back or tooting my own horn or sounding like a narcissist, I'm willing to risk all for what I believe in. I've always been that way, even before I started Judicial Watch in 1994 and Freedom Watch in 2004. I will do what needs to be done, because I can't look in the mirror if I'm not going the max. And our founding fathers couldn't do that either. I mean, they risked everything to found a new nation. So this week, I want to give you just a little story is that I've been seeking documents from Robert Mueller about his communications with the media. This could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, because I believe that he has been leaking grand jury information during the so-called witch hunt, and that's a crime. And if that's exposed, then he's gone. Okay, he'll have to resign. In any event, our citizens' grand juries are going to indict him first. On September 25th, he's going to get an indictment, I can assure you, for everything that he's done in exceeding his constitutional authority, in engaging in a witch hunt without the proper legal basis to do it, and leaking grand jury information. Well, just a few days before we were to get these documents on September 4th, and I predicted this, Sessions' Justice Department comes back. Sessions is representing Mueller. Can you believe that? Through his Justice Department. And they say, there was a computer glitch. Can't even say it. I'm getting tongue-tied. That's how upset I am. Computer glitch. We can't produce all the documents now. So I say, when are you going to produce them? They say, we don't know. We have to figure out how to solve the computer glitch. Now, this isn't comedy. This is reality. So I have in front of the court Judge Emmett Sullivan, probably the only Democrat Clinton appointee in the entire universe who's a fairly honest guy. He's an honest guy. He's a good guy. I said, I want an evidentiary hearing. Bring these people in about the computer glitch. Well, the judge hasn't ruled on that yet, but we're going to be fighting in that regard. Because why did Mueller push all of this off? Because, and I'm getting choked up again, because he's going to be trying Paul Manafort again next week. He's doing his impeachment report. He wants to take the president down. He wants to take the country down. And he doesn't want to have any interference in doing that. So they created this situation. And again, who's sitting on top of this, allowing this fraud to occur? Attorney General Jeff Sessions. And this gets to the difference between me at Freedom Watch and Sessions at the Justice Department. It shows the difference between Larry Klayman and Jay Sekulow and Giuliani, is that we're fighting back. And that's what the president needs to do. It's time for him to get rid of these lawyers, to follow his instincts, hire me or hire somebody else. I don't know of anybody else, frankly, that will go the distance. But you got to go for broke, because you are being taken to the guillotine. You can do all these rallies that you want, but the establishments in Washington, D.C. of both political parties want you figuratively, and in some respects we've seen that, actually dead. So please support Freedom Watch. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. We are your Justice Department. We're David against Goliath. We have lawsuits. In effect, we're the defense firm of President Trump, because if he goes down, we go down. We'll get somebody like Cory Booker next time. Can you believe that? As president? If he goes down, that's what we're going to get, President Cory Booker. And we're going to have a race war and everything else on our hands, because this guy has to foment dissent to try to be elected. Or you'll get Elizabeth Warren. You'll have Pocahontas out there. Or you'll have Bernie Sanders, who's completely mad at this point, who did his honeymoon in Moscow. I mean, that could be a Hollywood movie, honeymoon in Moscow. So you need to support Freedom Watch. We're going into these citizens' grand juries. Mueller's going to be the first to be indicted, tried, convicted, and sentenced. And we have to legally take him out, because he's got so much up his sleeve right now to try to destroy this president and take the country down, that we have to support Freedom Watch. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, donate to our cause, tax-deductible contributions. Buy my book. You'll get it free if you donate over $100. The Essays of a Madman. It chronicles what's been going on in this country now for a very long time, and really support the cause of patriots. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. I can't say it enough. We need your support. We need your help. We need your prayers. God bless you. God bless America. And God save America. And I'll be back next week with another hard-hitting edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Thank you.